Hello weirdos, welcome back to my channel. We are doing a wrap up today. We are going to be talking about all the books that I read in February. I read 14 books. Before I really want to get started with the video, I just kind of want to acknowledge what's happening in Ukraine. It's kind of really wild and fucked up. I feel like I have nothing to contribute that would be of worthwhile, but I just kind of wanted to let you guys know that people on YouTube and on BookTube are from all over, and I just kind of wanted to extend my sympathy and empathy for any of you who are being directly affected by this war. Hopefully it is over and gets resolved quickly and peacefully, with minimal to no more bloodshed, but that is hopeful thinking, but who knows, you never know. I read 14 books. I actually surprisingly read a lot of Asian literature unintentionally. It just kind of worked out that way. I did try and shift mid-month to reading some more Black literature, African American literature, and I just didn't finish everything that I was reading in the month of February, so some of that stuff will be coming in March. So look forward to some of the stuff that I read in March. I'm gonna try something new here and put the book right here. So this is Baba. This is the first book that I read. This is by Belle Yang, and this is really interesting. It's not my favorite memoir. I think part of that is due to because when I was reading it, I was just very, very preoccupied with my roommates being assholes, or at least two of them being assholes, and that was just causing a lot of anxiety. And that was happening in the beginning of February. I won't go into too many details, but let's just say they left their dishes in the sink for 10 days, a minimum of 10 days. Yeah, so it's just borderline, very unacceptable behavior from roommates. So this book is a series of essays that Belle Yang talks about her father and her father's experiences growing up in China, and it's accompanied with a lot of these really, really beautiful watercolors. I really like how everything is placed on the page. But yeah, other than that, it was a pretty solid book. Like I said, I think a lot of my memories of this book are really hampered by the emotional turmoil that I was dealing with at the time. I probably will have to revisit this at some point, and this is also I read this with my eyeballs since it doesn't have an audiobook. But yeah, I thought it was a really sweet, intimate jaunt through this person's life. All right, had to do a little bit of reshuffling to make sure that book could stay on the shelf. So this next book that I read is the Anthropocene Reviewed. This is by John Green. And this is the first book by John Green that I've actually enjoyed. I don't know if that's terrible, because I DNF'd one of his books in January. I think it's honestly, for me, I much prefer John Green's nonfiction stuff. I really loved all of the Crash Course things that he did. And this is a nonfiction book. I just think for me personally, John Green works so much better as a nonfiction writer, but that's just me. That's just my opinion. It's literally worth nothing. I think that John Green got really emotional, got really deep in this book. I was tearing up a few times, I'm not gonna lie. And I read this because it won the nonfiction category for the Goodreads Choice Awards. And yes, thoroughly enjoyed it. I really loved it. Essentially what this book is a series of essays and reviews that are about something Anthropocene related. And Anthropocene is basically the age of humans. So anything human related. So he talks about Halley's Comet. He talks about certain songs, and shows. So yeah, I thought it was just a very, very eclectic and beautiful book, and I'm very glad that I read it. Okay, well, I think that's as good as it's gonna get. The next book that I read was She Who Became the Sun. This is by Shelley Parker Chan, and this is a story about this young woman. She and her brother both get their fortunes read, and her brother's fortune is one of greatness and her fortune is one of nothingness. She is living through a famine, and it's during a time where it's also set in China. And they're in a rural part of China, and she is so smart. You can tell that from like the first pages. She is so smart. She is finding ways to scrounge for survival because she knows that that girls are way less desirable than men. So they will constantly be fed less food during this famine. So she is like, I'm going to survive. How am I going to survive? And lo and behold, her brother and her father wind up getting murdered. Not gonna reveal any details about why they get murdered. So she takes her brother's fortune of like everything, and she takes it for herself, and she joins a temple, joins like a Buddhist temple to be a monk, and is struggling for survival there. And then she winds up becoming this general through a large series of events. I very much enjoyed this book. I cannot wait until the second one comes out. I cannot even tell you, I went to like 3 different Barnes and Nobles and to try and find a copy of this book. On Amazon, I tried to find it on Amazon, and at the time they were out. It wasn't until I went to Boston for like a day and they had a copy of this. It was Trident Booksellers. It was the last copy that they had. So I went on an odyssey to freaking get this book, and I have this book now, and I'm just really happy. One thing I very thoroughly enjoyed is the lesbianism in this book. The main character does wind up getting married to a woman, and I have so many feelings. And yeah, I think this book deserves like all the praise that it's getting. All right, let's go to the next book. Okay, the next book I read was Beijing Comrades. This is by Bai Tong. This book fucking destroyed me. I was murdered. I almost cried so fucking hard. I was distraught. I was very, very distraught. Okay, so what is this? This is essentially a chaotic, angsty romance between 2 gay Chinese men set in the early 90s. And oh my god, like it was everything that I wanted. Holy crap. So I don't want to spoil this book for you, because if you can get it, please freaking read this. Oh, I loved it. But essentially, I read this book because it was recommended to me by the Storygraph. It came up in like my recommendations when I filled that whole thing out. A little bit about Bai Tong. We don't know actually much about Bai Tong. We don't know if they are a man or a woman, if they are queer or not. We know virtually nothing except that this book was written in the 80s when Bai Tong was in America, and it was never actually officially published in China because it's too goddamn gay. And so this is the English translation, and it's kind of like amalgamated to a bunch of different things because this book was like censored heavily depending on where it was like released. There are lots of steamy scenes in this book, and I mean, they're not the best scenes, sex scenes that I've ever read. In my kind of brain, that's what AO3 is for. If you want to get some real good smut and spicy things, you go there. But yeah, this book was like the book that ushered in a huge wave of danmei and like BL and all of that in the modern day in China. So you have 2 main characters, and it's I forget the second main character's name, but he is a wealthy businessman, all of that stuff, who is bisexual, which I really loved, that he was a bisexual king. And then you have the other main interest, which is Lan Yu. I cannot spoil anything, but I died. This book destroyed me. It destroyed me. but it was so good. It was everything I wanted. I have realized over the course of reading fan fiction, especially for MDCS, that angst is something that I love. And this book is chock full of freaking angst. And it makes me happy. It's fairly like, there isn't a lot of like super intense plot. It is really just the two main characters and them breaking up and getting back together and all of this stuff. Yeah, super good. I will say this does not have an audiobook, so I read it with my eyeballs. And I like had to force myself to put it down, which doesn't happen like super often. Not saying that that is a mark of quality negatively on books that don't do that, but I just was so compelled to keep reading this book, and it's almost 500 pages. So I don't know if that tells you anything, but that just so rarely happens to me personally when I am reading a book, and I was just like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, I need to know. And it makes me happy, and I'm just so glad this book exists, because this book has paved the way for books that I also love, like, you know, The Grand Master of Demonic Cultivation and other books by MXTX and Meat Bun. Also, random side tangent, but I found out yesterday, which was Wednesday, that Meat Bun's Arhua, that's getting published. I'm very excited. Anyway, so there you go. So good. This is gonna be one of my favorite books of the year. Like, I know that. This book is Scum Villain's Self-Saving System. This is by MXTX. You know, I thought I had a really good idea with putting these books on my bookshelf. Turns out not a good idea. Let me know in the comments. Do you think this was a waste of my time? Or, anyway. So, Scum Villain, which is out of MXTX books, there are 3. There's the Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, or MSDS. There is Heaven's Official's Blessing, and there is Scum Villain, or SVSS. And this is kind of like the unwanted stepchild of the 3, meaning it is the least popular. And it's also the shortest. I think this one is only getting like 4 volumes, where Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation is getting 5, and Heaven's Official's Blessing is getting like 8. So it's the shortest, and it kind of comes across in like the page length too. And it's, I think, the weirdest out of the 3, because it has like this weird video game element that I was not kind of expecting to see. So the main character essentially is transmigrated into the body of Shen Qingqiu. Oh my god, I cannot. Who is this sect leader in this cultivation sect. He is training a bunch of like people under him, and he basically has the task. The catch is that this world that he's transmitted to is the world of a book. So his task is to make the book not terrible, because the whole first chapter is his main character complaining about how terrible the book is, and like leaving hate comments and stuff like that. So it's very, very meta, and I kind of enjoyed that about it. And so he has put into this world of the book, and he has to fix it. And I find it so funny because I don't know, there's just moments that I think are just very enduring. Like, he's just like, okay, so this has to happen. So, and the other main character is Luo Binghe, and Luo Binghe is one of his disciples, and is gonna go down like this demonic path. He's a half demon. It's a whole thing, and it kind of turns into like this almost villain. That's kind of like the best way to come across it. And so Shen Qingqiu over here is just like, okay, so Luo Binghe has to get like pushed down to this ridge, and then his girlfriend has to be very upset and like crying all the time, because that's what like the original book states. But he's like, why am I over here like crying all the time, and his girlfriend isn't feeling anything? Because I just find that really funny, because we're kind of at the stage where in the plot of the book where the two characters haven't really acknowledged that they have like feelings for each other, because it is a romance between Shen Qingqiu and Luo Binghe, and Luo Binghe is very flirty, and I love it, and Shen Qingqiu is very like, what, like, I'm not here for this, I'm just trying to like figure out what is gonna happen, like I'm just trying to keep going through this world and to not die. And the self-saving system is what the thing that brought him into this world. I'm not like explaining this very well, but anyway, I really enjoyed it. I can't wait to read more. The thing that devastated me, that hurt, was the thing close to the end of the book. I don't want to tell you what it is. It's not quite the last chapter, but it separates the two characters. And yeah, I was like, oof, god damn it. That is a knife in the heart. Because in the original storyline, it was pretty bad. But given that the two main characters are progressively falling in love with each other, for Sin Chincho to do that kind of sucks. I know I'm being really, really vague, but I don't want to give you spoilers. So yeah, there's this one. That's the first spelling of this one. Very, very good. Next book that I read is Crying in H Mart, and I can't talk to you about that because it is in the running for the BookTube prize. So wait till the end of March to hear my feelings about that book. The next book that I read is Between Two Kingdoms. This is by Suleika Jawad. I wasn't expecting to like as much as I did. It did not really feel something super up my alley. It is a memoir. It was in the running for the Goodreads Choice Awards. It made it to the top 10. I'm not really sure where exactly it placed, but it's a book that I chose to read. It's kind of like my plus, you know, my choice ones that I read from the Goodreads Choice Awards. And this just got, I mean, it's a book about cancer, so I mean, of course it got deep, of course it got really emotional, of course I got like choked up, but I don't know, it was just more than I was expecting. I wasn't expecting much, quite frankly. Essentially, it is about Suleika's diagnosis and her going through her journey with cancer, and then what happens after, because Suleika also made a whole blog, and it got super popular online. I'd never heard of it before, but I'm a loser. So, and she goes on this journey after her recovery, and she visits a bunch of people that wrote to her, or yeah, from her blog, and kind of, but basically people who wrote to her while she was in cancer. And can I just say, I fucking hated her boyfriend, like, the whole time. I was like, oh my god, you are such a, like, asshole. Like, I understand being a carer, and I've never been a carer for someone who is sick, so asterisks. But her boyfriend was just, like, felt so entitled to completely dismiss her emotions, to completely ignore how she was feeling, and he would, like, just go off during weekends to, like, visit his family, and, like, I get it, we all need time, but kind of, like, coordinate it a little bit better. And it was constantly back and forth, and I was like, oh my god, fucking drop him. He's gross. He's not what you need. And spoilers, they do wind up separating, which thank god, because if they had actually continued to like get married or something like that, that could have been really bad. Yeah, and in the book, she just kind of like talks about how there was fault on both sides, and I kind of get her wanting to say that, but in my opinion, I'm like, you're the person, Suleika, you're going through cancer. Like, I feel like you deserve a little bit more grace than your boyfriend, who is being a little bit of an asshole. But that's just me. I'm glad the whole time I was like, oh my god, freaking drop him, because when she was diagnosed with cancer, they were only like a couple weeks into their relationship, and right then I knew I was like, oh my god, you guys need to like separate, because that is not going to end well. And I was right. Will this fit? Boom. Okay. This next book, Daughter of Moon Goddess. This is by Su Lin Tan. So good. This is everything I wanted. Like, in terms of like the genre, I really love Chinese fantasy, and I love stuff especially in this vein, very much so. I literally read the inside cover of many people have heard Tales of My Mother, the Moon Goddess. Some people still said that like she stole immortality, or that she was given it, and I was like, oh my god, this is going to be good. This is going to be very much in the vein of Ashes of Love, and it's going to give me everything. So yeah, you have like celestial kingdoms, you have immortals, people cultivating to their immortality, that sort of stuff. What can I say? I'm a sucker for Chinese fantasy. And yeah, it's everything I wanted. Also, can I just say, Li Wei in this, man, I loved him so much. Because, so Li Wei is the crown prince, and he just, like, is reverential to his parents. He understands, like, what his parents want and what his parents expect of him, but he also knows that he loves the main character in this, and he's going to stand his ground when it comes to being with the main character. And I just, like, really appreciated that. Like, he never, like, doubted her throughout all of the lies that were spread about her through this whole thing, and it was beautiful. So essentially, I forget the main character's name, and I'm gonna butcher it if I try and look it up and say it. So the main character, she is the daughter of the moon goddess. To prevent her from being discovered by the rest of the celestial kingdom, her mom basically tells her to leave the moon. And so she leaves the moon and winds up through a series of multiple things, lies about her identity, saying that, you know, her family's just, you know, regular people from the celestial kingdom and that they're dead. She winds up becoming Li Wei, the crown prince's, like, study partner. I don't really know how else to, like, describe it, but they're going to learn about cultivation and magic together. And it's so cute, and that's how they, like, grew and developed their friendship and then their relationship, and you really felt the friendship in this, and the relationship part kind of grew out of that, and I really liked how that was written. And then after various things, main character becomes a soldier in the army, and specifically an archer, which is very poetic because her father's an archer. And that's why, anyway, I don't want to get too much into Chinese mythology because this book is already getting pretty long. But I just really loved it, and I don't know what else to say. I'm going to be buying the next book when it comes out, and this is just honestly like a very impulse purchase for me, and I'm very happy that I did that. So anyway, continuing on. Next book that I read is The Plague Year. This is by Lawrence Wright, and I can't talk about that one either because it's in the running for the BookTube prize. But again, March. That is when to hear all my feelings. The next book after that is Concrete Rose by Angie Thomas. And oh my god, I love this one too. I arguably like this one more than The Hate You Give. I don't know why that is, but I just really felt Maverick's struggles in this. The constant push and pull between wanting to be the good person that his mom and other community members sees him as, and wanting to provide for his family, and how those two things kind of bump heads a lot. So essentially, if you've read The Hate You Give, you kind of know the story behind this. It follows Maverick, who was Star's father from The Hate You Give, and it's his journey from being like a gangbanger and a drug seller to being more not a criminal anymore, to being the man that like he wants to be, and you know, him figuring out fatherhood because he gets 2 girls pregnant. But we know this. If you've read The Hate You Give, you know this isn't a surprise. And yeah, I just think that how raw that he was able to be, and the way that Angie Thomas was able to write him, it was really good, in my opinion. And I think that's amazing to see like that representation of a very strong, like Black male character, able to be vulnerable and able to be allowed to cry and show his emotions and feel overwhelmed. And I thought that that was just a very, very healthy level of representation. I, in case you couldn't tell, am not a Black man. But I could imagine that that would be very, very, like, not necessarily good representation, but it would feel good to see that, it is allowed to happen. And yeah, very good. I don't know, I again, almost teared up. This is a very, like, solid reading month for me this year, as like this month, as I'm like talking about these books. I'm very happy I read the books that I read. Next is Antonia Frazier's Marie Antoinette. And this was a pretty long biography. I think it was almost 500, if not over 500 pages. And honestly, pretty solid. I wasn't expecting much out of this book, but I thoroughly enjoyed it for like being a biography. I was like, wow. I don't know, I just thought that the way that Antonia Frazier was able to depict life as it was in Versailles, but also in Paris and France in general, was very, very compelling. And I love the picture that she painted of Marie Antoinette herself as being a flawed individual, a human person, trying to maintain the levels of standards and expectations in this very, very, very structured and hierarchical like society that she was not ready for, absolutely. And also like balancing and trying to deal with being a mother, the mother of a nation. And I honestly felt kind of a lot of empathy like towards her at the end, especially because there were plenty of opportunities for her family members who were in very, very prominent like positions of power. Like they did nothing. They just kind of let her die essentially. And that was just very shocking to me. I guess I didn't like realize that her family were just kind of like, you know what, whatever, it's fine. That was just very, very sad to me. That being said, I don't think that Marie Antoinette after this is a wholly good person. There's just like a lot of times just the level of just spending and like seemingly uncaringness. That's not a word, but we're gonna go with it. It's just very like shocking. And I think a lot of that is tied up with the societal expectations of the Queen of France, someone who has to run Versailles. Like, holy shit. Versailles is just a whole beast of just toxicity because of the rules and the expectations and like the appearances that you have to put up. It's very just structured and something that like I do not think a young 16-year-old girl would enjoy going through. So there you go. That's that one. All right, Homo Deus, let's talk about it. I don't know how to feel about this book because like some of it just made me just like really mad. And some of it, I was like, yeah. And I think part of that was I was having a real hard time thinking about the book in the way that it's intended to be thought about. Like, Yuval Noah Harari just kind of presents this as a possible future. I just didn't buy the future. You know, I was just like, I just don't think that is going to happen. Personally, like, do I think that some aspects of what is going to happen might happen? But I don't know. And I also just got frustrated because he kept calling things religions that are not religions. And it just really, really bugged me because he would talk about all these things in religions in almost like a derogatory tone. And like he talks about like the religion of liberalism. And I'm like, that doesn't mean anything. Like liberalism, the idea and the way that it's practiced today is absolutely nothing like any religious system. And maybe it's just the anthropologist in me that has like these terms mean something and they mean something very specific on a very cultural level that the author should know about because of Sapiens. Which I really, really did love Sapiens. And I just think that like this book was just not for me. Religion is like a belief in like a supernatural. Religion specifically deals with the supernatural, and it deals with explanations that cannot be explained in a natural way. The religion of liberalism, as he defines it, has jack all to do with the supernatural. So it in my opinion, it fundamentally cannot be categorized in the same box as Christianity, for example. That was my eternal beef with this book. Because I just was like, I just, maybe, and he was talking about things like a lot, like coding things. Can I just say, he is a history professor. This is a person that is not necessarily qualified to be talking about the technologies that he is talking about. That being said, I could be full of shit. He could know, like he could be, but just from what I've seen, like all of his accreditations and stuff like that is specifically dealing with history and the study of history. Not saying that history cannot inform how technologies are moving into the future. But I think the way that he thinks about a lot of things like AI are very much in the popular consensus of what AI and neural networks and stuff like that are capable of doing. At least as of right now. Like, people think of these things as just a lot more grandiose and having a lot more power behind them than they actually do. At least as of right now. And to be fair, I mean, I'm just a computer science student. Computer science kind of deals with a lot of these things. And part of the problem that we're facing right now is programs can only do what we tell them to do. And a lot of the stuff that he's talking about, like advancements in technology, go beyond that. And I'm not saying that that is impossible. I just, as of right now, where I am seeing a lot of the technology and stuff like that, a lot of times like overblown. Do I think that technology taking over lay people's jobs is a problem? Hell yes, that is going to be a problem that we are not ready for in the future. And I also just think a lot of the ideas that he has about, like, one thing that he talks about is that there are going to be these algorithms that are going to be developed that are going to know you so well that you will no longer need to be making like a decision. They'll be able to predict who you're going to vote for president, what you're going to eat at lunch tomorrow. Therefore, voting for president is no longer really necessary. I don't see society moving to that point, especially now. Like, I'm seeing a lot of pushback from a lot of the technologies. There's lots of people in the technical field that are pushing back on a lot of the advancements that are happening in like AI and algorithms and stuff like that are happening. Not saying that it's fixing the problem. It's a very balls to the wall envision of the future, and I just don't really know if I just don't buy it. And that's my essential problem with the book. I don't know if I'm going to read his third book, which is 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. I really do enjoy his history writing, and if he writes another book that deals with like history and stuff like that, maybe it takes like a more like historical view of like the current events, I would enjoy that a little bit more than I enjoyed this one. Yeah, that's my feelings. Okay, I'm gonna say, I felt like a total nerd when I was reading this book, when I'd walk around on campus with this book in my bag and reading it, because this is an archaeology of Easter Island. It is a very, very dense archaeological, like, talking about and how they talk about Easter Island, but I found it really interesting because I'm a fucking nerd. Like, the mysteries that they talk about revolve around things like, how did the society in Easter Island, like, disappear? I really liked reading about how they figured out how these statues were moved all over. I really liked hearing about who were the people who were populating Easter Island. So I enjoyed this. I don't really want to talk too much about it because I don't really think you guys are going to find it that interesting, but that's just me. Okay, last one. I promise. The Push. This is by Ashley Andren. It gave me massive Bad Seed vibes, which, if you don't know, it's a play about this young woman, this child, I think she's like 7 to 10. She murders one of her schoolmates because her schoolmate has like a trophy that she wants. Straight up fucking murders this child. It's, the Bad Seed is all about the mother like grappling with basically knowing that her daughter fucking murdered this child for a very, very petty reason. Like, that was definitely the energy of The Push. I really enjoyed it. For like a while, I went through like this journey of believing the main character, and I'm like, oh yes, you're definitely feeling all of your feelings. And then going straight to like doubting her. I'm like, oh my god, she's just going like crazy because she just has this narrative in her brain that isn't matching up with what everybody else is telling her. And then the last like 2 paragraphs happen, and I like was like, holy shit. I was like not expecting it, but I was like, oh my god. And then it just ends there, and I was like, oh my god. It's so much more than just that. It's really an exploration of motherhood and like generational trauma and how that is passed down from like parents to children, because the main character really doesn't really want to be a mother. She feels pressured into it, and you hear all about her grandmother and her mother and how their experiences and how the cycle of trauma works. And it specifically talks about breaking those cycles and stuff like that. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. And holy crap, that ending, I cannot. Also, what adds to like you thinking that the main character is just going off the rails is the escalation and the things that she starts to do that are increasingly like not normal. Like a person in a healthy headspace would not be doing these. Like she starts stalking her husband's new lover and like actively lies about who she is in order to get in this new chick's like good graces. And I'm like, holy crap, girl, go to therapy. And there you go. That's how my reading month went. I think it went really well. Let me know, what is your favorite book that you read this month? And did you like any of the books that I read? Please, for the love of God, read Beijing Comrades. Okay, that is all. I'm gonna leave you because this is like almost 15 minutes long. Okay, bye.